Well, in just the past few hours, President Trump has spoken at a virtual town hall meeting, and he's now predicting the death toll in the U.S. could reach 100,000. That's far higher than what he's been saying so far. Well, let's now bring in Peter Mathews. He's a professor of political science at Cypress College, and he joins us now from Los Angeles. Peter, this was a 2-hour-long broadcast, and President Trump had quite a bit to say. I want to start with a narrative that it seems we're hearing increasingly from the White House. Let's take a listen to this.
It's a terrible thing that happened to our country. It came from China. It should have been stopped. It could have been stopped on the spot. They chose not to do it, or something happened. Either there was incompetence or they didn't do it for some reason. And we're going to have to find out what that reason was. But people are absolutely scared.
Peter, this is clearly a line we're going to be hearing until Election Day.
Unfortunately, because it's much more important to say what we can do right now to fix the problem rather than going back and blaming China, when there's still a dispute as to, first, he's saying that it was a lab-produced virus, when the DNI director said it's the consensus of the scientific community is that it came from nature. It's not a lab-produced virus. So he's going back to blame China, and I think it's more important that he should actually say what can be done now to keep people safe. They should be keeping the social distance, using the mask, and then the economy should come afterwards. First of all, you need to get people to be healthy and stay healthy in order to have a good economy later on. Look at what Denmark and Germany did. They had the government pay workers directly. They had the government put money directly into businesses, so it didn't go through the banks, and it was much more efficient, and that would keep people together in those business networks for when the economy does open. That's the way it should have been done. It hasn't been done that way, and now he's flailing around trying to figure out what's going on and blaming China instead of saying what should be done right now and taking action.
Well, Peter, it seems that a number of people agree with you because President Trump's approval numbers have been falling, and one of the things that could potentially help that is a vaccine. Now, most experts say that we're looking at the middle of next year at the very earliest, likely even longer than that. Let's listen to what President Trump had to say about that.
We're going to have a vaccine at the end of the year. By the end of the year, have a vaccine.
By the end of this year.
We think we're going to have a vaccine by the end of this year. And we're pushing very hard. You know, we're building supply lines now. We don't even have the final vaccine. Johnson & Johnson, if you look at Johnson & Johnson is doing it. We have many companies are, I think, close, because I meet with the heads of them, and I find it a very interesting subject because it's so important. But I think we'll have a vaccine by the end of the year.
Peter, what do you make of that?
He cannot guarantee that, and it's very dangerous to give false hopes. I mean, even Dr. Fauci said it'll be at least, if we're lucky, it'll be next January. There's a lot of things that have to come together, and it could be more than the middle of next year. So you shouldn't count on the vaccine. He should stick to the social distancing, the quarantining of people who are infected, do widespread testing, as South Korea did. By the way, South Korea model was the best. They initially, as soon as they heard about what happened in China, they started testing their people on a widespread basis, and they had social distancing right away, and they've gone to a negative growth in their disease right now, whereas we're going up and up, and here President wants to open everything up. So I think it's disingenuous for him to say that we're going to have a vaccine by the end of January and to count on that instead of really doing things that are really appropriate for this moment in time.
Peter, we've also been talking here about this strategy of shifting blame, and it seems that President Trump is now also directing some of that at his intelligence chiefs. He's saying that in late January he was told about the coronavirus in a briefing, but then said it was presented as not a big deal, and that later he was the only one who wanted to take action in banning flights from China. But as I understand it, that's just patently not true.
It's just not true because, first of all, when he banned those flights, visiting from China, 40,000 people were still allowed to come through. And he wasn't the only one to take action. He should have taken action much earlier when he was first warned about it by his own economist, Peter Navarro, gave it to him in the beginning of January. There was so much of warnings, about 12 different reports in January and February from the intelligence community that this is a pandemic. It's already started in China. We have people on the ground over there. We know what was going on. He should have listened to the intelligence services and taken action at the beginning of February at the latest. He didn't even act till much, much later than that, and that was the problem. He shouldn't be shifting blame right now.
Peter, I see that Trump tonight has also been crediting himself with preventing an even worse death toll, insinuating that he personally has saved more than 1 million lives. And now, during that broadcast, I also see that Joe Biden posted a video criticizing Trump's handling of all of this. So talk us through, how is this playing out with the public?
Well, how could he say that when he's saying he did so much of saving of lives, and yet we're talking about the U.S. having 1/4 of the world's people who died, and 1/4. We have 6% of the world's population, and we've got 67,000 deaths. So he shouldn't be taking credit for that. Instead, he should put his shoulders to the grind and start working to listen to the scientists and use reason and science to get this thing fixed right away, and not go through just thinking about the next election. He shouldn't be worried about whether he's going to win the next election or not. So it's a real problem. And Joe Biden, I'm sure he came up with something. I didn't see what he said exactly, but what you mentioned about what Joe Biden said seems to make a lot of sense.
Peter Mathews there, a professor of political science at Cyprus College. Good to get your insights on Al Jazeera.
Thank you so much.